There's a moral panic in our hobby of tabletop role-playing games. At this point, I can't deny it. So, for whoever has been watching my videos, I don't have a big following, but um, I do notice that the few people who watch my videos do tend to watch them in full or almost so, which is encouraging. Personally, I don't care if I have a big following or not, as long as at least some people engage with the material I put out. That makes me happy. Um, as long as someone is actually watching it, that's a really good feeling. So for those of you who actually watch my episodes in full, and thank you, because I'm often talking about nuanced things, and I'm not the most concise person. I see people who are able to approach very nuanced and different difficult topics and do it within like a short framework of time. That's not me. I tend to take a long time to express myself. I try to, and now I'm trying lately to make it shorter, which of course all of this introduction is not making it shorter, nevertheless. Um, but if you have been following my videos, you've noticed that lately I've tried to approach things through this centrist approach, where I might have a point of view and I'm trying to explain both sides of the equation and all that. And this is all based on when I went and John from Tale of the Manticore told me I was only on Instagram for my actual play channel, Chronicles of the Crimson Hound. So if you don't follow me there, if you want to see my actual plays, it's in Chronicles of the Crimson Hound. It's a different channel than this one. And John from Tale of the Manticore, an amazing D&D podcast, by the way. It's sort of like an actual solo actual play, and he's a very good writer, and he creates this audio drama that's in an old school D&D style. But anyway, he told me I should like go on Twitter. He's like, yeah, Twitter is really good. There's a lot of people there, so that's what I did. I went on Twitter. But then I got exposed to a lot of drama on Twitter. I got not even that mean necessarily, yeah, almost not. But it's just I just saw a lot of drama, just saw a lot of things, and at first I I had a very naive approach. I made a lot of videos that were trying to, hey, both sides of the issue. Here's where maybe you're not understanding each other, and because Twitter is an awful place to have nuanced discussions, by the way, or even normal conversations. Already the written format is risky because misunderstand. I'm sorry if there's noise, by the way. There's construction. There's nothing I can do about it. Um, the written format can sometimes be misinterpreted because you don't have tone. You don't, and people often when they post on social media, they're kind of posting and then they go do something else. It's not like they're spending a lot of time thinking about how they're going to write this. And then Twitter is awful because if you reply to a reply, like it's in this branch, but the other reply is a different thread. And Twitter is an awful place to have a nuanced conversation. Let alone, of course, a lot of people go with false equations. Oh, if you say this, then you probably also think this, and that comes out of nowhere and stuff like that. So it's just really hard to keep up with arguments and conversations on Twitter. It's an awful place for that. And yet, there's a lot of people who that's where they take their moral stances. And there's a moral panic in the hobby right now, the tabletop RPG hobby. There is a moral panic, and that is to say, I see things that don't make sense to me as an adult who has consumed different types of cinema over the years, different types of books. Some of them like asking hard questions, or some stories presenting characters who are not heroic, and that's the whole point, to explore different issues, different points of view, and even maybe exploring the dark side of humanity. Like we all have a duality. People watching slasher movies, it doesn't mean they're dangerous. And you know, some of them end badly. So you don't even have the argument, oh, it's to see good win against evil in the end, because some of those slasher movies they end with the monster coming back and actually getting the person they were going for. So are people who like horror movies that end badly problematic? No, they're not. I mean, some of them can be, but that's independent of the fact that they like the movie. And yeah, you can like material for bad reasons. But I'm starting to see stuff like, oh, people who like Fight Club, that's a red flag, that it might be problematic. Like, are you for real? Fight Club is an amazing movie, which actually addresses toxic masculinity. I do believe in toxic masculinity, but masculinity itself is not toxic. But there is a version of it which is. Um, and I am a traditionally masculine man, and by that I mean that when I see weaker people in trouble, I will go defend them. You know, stuff like that. That is, to me, um, a traditionally masculine trait. You know, for someone who's um, masculine in a noble way, if you will. But I do believe in toxic masculinity. It's something I believe in. I do use that term because it also goes straight to the point. Okay. Anyway, um, so for example, people saying that oh, people liking Fight Club is a red flag. Actually, Fight Club addresses a lot of very good points about how men can go wrong sometimes, and what it is about society that can make them go wrong. And now in that movie's from the 90s, so the kind of like some of the themes and topics are from that era, but the sense of disillusionment or disenfranchisement, feeling disenfranchised. My English is really bad today. Um, those topics don't go away, you know. So I think, and Fight Club actually addresses those things. Of course, some people are just gonna stop at like, oh yeah, being rebellious and fighting. You know, like sure, there's gonna be idiots for everything, but you can't use media to judge people like that. You know, someone like look, I can never even finish a Clockwork Orange. Okay, so I myself am someone who might be a bit softer when it comes to certain material. Like there's things that I don't like seeing. I I was never able to finish watching Clockwork Orange. There's this scene where I just stopped watching. I myself am someone who does not enjoy that movie, even though I'm sure the cinematography is amazing. Sure, it has a lot to say about humanity. Maybe someday I'll go back to it and I'll just kind of like maybe a bit more prepared for the kind of material that's in the movie. I'll go watch it, you know, knowing what to expect. But I'm certainly not someone who is able to see any sort of media, and I still, you know, I would never say someone like in a movie is problematic. Okay, so coming back to role playing games, there's things that I see. For example, now is the era of the safety tool. You know, like if you don't like something in the game, you put an X card on the table and everything stops. You know, like, and you don't have to explain yourself. I don't have anything against people needing that, but what I have a problem with is people saying stuff like, if you're against safety tools, you're against consent. Like, look, I have been a game master for many, many years. We never use safety tools, me and my friends. And at the risk of sounding like some sort of weird virtual signaler, um, my game group consisted of three women and one guy. Okay, and of the whole group, I don't want to be crass enough to start listing like what my players what they identify as or where they stand, or but the combination of cisgendered straight white men, I'm the only guy in that group with that whole combination. Okay, so this is not a group of like yeah middle-aged white dudes who are so old school in their mindset. And no, I'm very progressive, but I never needed safety tools in my group, nor do I want them because me and my friends are able to talk to each other. It doesn't mean I'm gonna judge you for doing that, but the fact that some people are like, yeah, if you don't use them, you're problematic. Like you're against consent. Like no, shut up. I'm not. We're not. We're not. To me, that the idea of safety tools makes no sense because, personally, it goes with everything else in life when you hang out with your friends. Like if two of your friends are talking about politics and you don't feel like hearing about politics, can you imagine like people are talking about politics and it just because of the pandemic and everything you're sensitive to the issue maybe, or people are talking about like whatever it is, and you just go and instead of going like guys can we talk about something else in politics please, and instead of just being natural in the conversation with your friends and letting them know maybe you're not in the mood for that, you just go and pull an X card, and everyone's like it's just like okay, so we stop our conversation. What's the X card for? And then you go, I don't want to have to explain my trauma. So how do you address this with your friends? How do you move forward to your friend? Like, and again, if that's what works for you, fine. But like, don't go with this narrative that everyone needs that. First of all, just explaining to someone that this is something you might be more sensitive about. If you call that describing trauma, like I don't think a sane group would go like, no, but tell us in detail why this thing affects you so much. Tell us what the background of it is. Tell us how it happened. Like, no normal group, and if they do, then yeah, maybe maybe distance yourself from that group, of course. But so it's this moral extremism, this moral panic. Like, oh, if you don't use safety tools, you're a bad person. You're against consent. Like, no, like not everyone needs that. Not everyone is traumatized to a point where they can even express what bothers them to other people. And I'm not mocking or dissing anyone for being that traumatized or being that unable to express themselves. I do think, however, some people out there are um, how can I put this? You know, life in life, it's like anything else in life. Like you get good at what you practice and what you do. So if you learn to express yourself or to establish your parameters and your limits when just in a normal, natural way, um, you become a better functioning adult. If, however, every time something bothers you, you just shut down. And again, there's actual real hardcore drama that I would never dismiss or mock or anything like that. Like if I'm a GM and I describe a situation where like some muggers attack the characters in an alley, and one of my players, like he was mugged 3 nights ago, and suddenly he starts shaking and crying. I'm not gonna be like toughen up. Like no, of course I'll understand. Like he's been through a traumatic experience, and by accident I triggered something there. By creating a scene with muggers in an alley. Like, because it can be everything. It's people always also think that it's like, oh, if you go like edge lord hardcore and you bring very dark themes, that's what's gonna happen. But I think in real life, like you never know what's gonna trigger it. So it's also kind of a reason to not even start thinking like that, because you don't know what's gonna trigger someone anyway. Um, sure, if they tell you in advance, like it's not like I have an issue with a player son going like, "Hey, there's teams that I don't really, I'm not comfortable with. Is that going to be in the game or not?" Or I think that's perfectly fine. I'm talking about like just shutting everything down. Like not even expressing yourself. I don't think that's healthy for some people. Um, I think there's cases where what's happening is people are losing the ability to express themselves and to communicate properly, and they have this X card that's like this cop out of not having to deal with your emotions or express yourself. And I don't think that will make you that functional in actual real society. In actual real society, you're going to be talking to people who don't always agree with you, who are not always of the same mindset as you. Um, and look, if you want to isolate yourself from the world and just hang out with people who are exactly like you, and the X cards and all that works for you, that's fine. Just don't go and paint people who have no use for them as bad guys. And then I also see this nonsense about like, oh, why would you choose to play evil characters in an evil campaign in a role playing game? That means there's something wrong with you. Like, no, no, come on. If every player at the table knows that they're going to play an evil campaign, and I'm not talking about someone who wants to make an evil character in a normal campaign, and everyone's like, oh, what the hell? Like, if everyone is like, yeah, let's do an evil campaign, and everyone knows, and yes, maybe for that one, like, I would certainly encourage like stating ahead of time kind of what the limits are for that, for sure. But to think that telling that kind of story makes someone problematic or makes them actually evil, like, it's nonsense. It is utter nonsense. Like, exploring dark themes doesn't make someone problematic and doesn't make them. If anything, I'm gonna say this, like, because it's a nuance that's lost. I think like people playing an evil campaign, if anything, have a good moral compass, because they understand that what their characters are doing is evil stuff. Like, they actually acknowledge and understand that these are evil actions, so they can differentiate like, oh, my good character would not normally do that, so my evil character will do that. And very often, I think like no one starts with an evil campaign. The evil campaign, this is my theory, kind of starts because when you play role-playing games, you're always kind of like, GMs will put difficult choices in front of you, like, oh, do you catch your enemy who killed your family, or do you save the orphans from the burning building, and so of course, like, I'll go save the orphans, like, and I think at some point as a player, you become kind of, on some level, I mean, I love those moral decisions to make, but on some level, also, it's kind of like liberating to play a game where you just think of yourself. You don't like you think of your own goals and profit, and you don't have to worry about other people. And if someone annoys you in the tavern, like your character will just like do something awful, and it's just like this fantasy world with no one hurt, like imaginary characters, and you just get to, for once, not worry about morality, like it's just like very cathartic and freeing, and it's just fun. Like, I have played a Vampire the Masquerade game that was Sabbat. The Sabbat are the evil vampires. um that's the worst simplification, but yeah, they're the vampires who don't even like think they should be hiding from humanity, like, I mean, in Vampire Masquerade, no, there's no vampire organization that's good, but the Sabbat are worse, if you will, than the Camarilla, who hide themselves from humanity. So think of the movie Near Dark, the massacre scene at the bar. That's kind of like the Sabbat vampires, and I have played a game like that. It's very freeing, like, and also, like, by contrast, I was always playing vampires with high humanity before. Before I got to that point, I was never playing evil vampires. I was always playing very moral vampires, trying to retain the humanity and trying to only feed on bad people or the willing. So when we finally played the evil game, it was just almost like the fun for me was just not even having to worry about who the victim of my vampire was to refill my blood points. You know, so like there was no dark intention really. It's just we're having fun between friends or exploring stories that maybe we can explore otherwise. So there's nothing wrong with that, and I'm not saying that it's for everyone. And I think that there's some people that I wouldn't want to play evil games with because they would take it to levels I don't want to go to. Um, but again, this moral panic, like, oh, why would you, like, and it's kind of like these weird questions. They're like, well, why would you if you're not really twisted? Why would you want to pretend to do twisted acts unless you're twisted? Like, and it's just, you know what, if you don't understand philosophy and psychology and the duality of people and of human beings, and like, I'm not going to explain to you. If you don't know what the shadow self is, if you can't understand how people are so complex, like, I'm also a fan of mixed martial arts, and you have like these guys who, for a living, they chose to go in a cage and beat up another human being, and then they give so much time and effort and money to charity at the same time. They actually do stuff that helps society, like Dustin Poirier. So these are very violent people in the sense of what they do is very violent, and they commit violence upon other human beings. But those other human beings are also willing to step in there. No one's unwilling there. They're not going to beat up people who don't want to fight. It's the same thing. People playing an evil campaign, they're not like hurting anyone. Um, so yeah, so if a mixed martial artist whose job is to hurt another human being who wanted to be there, and then he goes and builds wells in Africa, for example, and stuff like that, like, you cannot say that's a bad human being. You can't. Not if you have any common sense in you. So if you have like, I've seen like amazing people who do lots of good things play human characters. If I may virtue signal a bit, like, I've played evil characters, like the ones like the evil vampires of the Sabbat and Vampire the Masquerade in the past. But I'm also the kind of person who, in real life, I put myself in physical harm to defend others when they were being attacked. Me having played an evil vampire who hunts humans in a fictional game didn't stop me from being a moral person who put himself in harm's way to help others on the time game. Okay? As a quick side note, what I find kind of funny, what I actually find, what will creep me out, is not when people choose to play evil characters. It's when they choose to play good characters, but then they start doing like some really dark, twisted stuff, and they can't see that it's evil. They can't see that it's wrong. Like, that always disturbs me, because then I'm like, wait, this person's moral compass, how does it work exactly? Like, it gives me an idea that this person is actually just the laws are the only thing that stop them from doing really bad stuff, because if they can see how their lawful good or whatever good character wouldn't be doing that, especially with chaotic good. With chaotic good, it seems a lot of people get it really wrong. Like they forget, they really stick to chaotic, and it's like they think that chaotic good is like this way to call yourself good but do really messed up stuff, and it's not. Chaotic good is a very complex alignment actually, but good is there. There's good in the alignment, and a lot of people kind of go with because they're chaotic good. They do some really messed up stuff. Like I don't know, like someone bumps into them in a tavern, so they stab them in the alley, and they're like, "Whoa, my character's chaotic." Yeah, but that was not a good action. That was an evil action, you know. So, if anything, what I find creepy is not people playing evil characters and very well knowing those are evil characters and evil actions. It's when someone thinks they're playing a good character and they're being really evil. And this like moral extremism, moral determine like I determine that you are a bad person because of this fictional thing you like. I find actually sick, twisted, and evil myself. I think that's an evil thing to accuse people like that just because it doesn't fit what you like. So, for example, the fact that I could never finish Clockwork Orange, I would never claim that people who watch that are twisted. And it's a moral panic. Look, Clockwork Orange was part of the UK's video nasties. The movies that were forbidden by the government. Yeah, that's it. Okay, thank you for watching. Leave comments.